After having sifted through thousands and thousands of documents, I have sifted through thousands of documents on the Epstein files. I'm out of breath even doing it. I mean, I've been studying this relentlessly for the last few months, and I believe that I've caught something that no one else has seemed to catch. Everyone is too fixated on the things that Jeffrey Epstein was accused of. And they are horrific things. They are very, very horrific things. Don't get me wrong. Although, I think that that veil has clouded people from realizing exactly what Jeffrey Epstein was doing. Because once you lift that veil, you begin to see exactly what he was doing. Because it doesn't take someone with that amount of power and wealth and influence to be hanging around the most influential, the smartest, the most resourceful, the most scientifically literate, the best physicists and mathematicians and geneticists and financiers. It doesn't take him hanging out with these people in order to do the horrific things that he has done. That was simply a byproduct. So what was he actually doing? Well, guys, I'll tell you what he was actually doing. And for the record, make sure you watch till the end, and please just know that I'm very happy with my life. Let's put it that way. So if this gets out and something happens to me, just know that this is why. This is really why. I know that I joke around on YouTube and I'm like a mixture of like a funny guy sometimes. I talk about whatever. I'm just someone that happened to stumble upon something that no one else has been able to concur. And I don't know why, but regardless, when I give you this information, I just want you to know that I love my life and I am very happy with myself and I wouldn't do anything to myself. So with that being said, let's get right into it. Do you want to know what Jeffrey Epstein was doing? Why they had to shut him up? What exactly was he doing? It all comes from this book. This book right here explains everything that he was doing. So what was he doing? Well, yeah, might want to sit down for this one because although in comparison to the other things he's been accused of, I don't assume him to have any sort of morality whatsoever. But the reason why he was hanging out with all of these very, very famous, very prominent, very influential people within society was because, this sounds crazy, but hear me out. He wanted to and was successful in creating an genetically engineered human that was both incredibly competent and ambitious and was everything that makes a human able to thrive within our current society. Imagine you being able to engineer genetically a baby in a lab, and this baby automatically has an IQ of 175, is the most handsome or most gorgeous human that you've ever seen, and is light years ahead intellectually, physically, mentally, everything is just roundabout better. They are basically transhumanists, and you'll hear this a lot in the Epstein files. And I know that that's a lot. I know that I put a lot on that one sentence, but hear me out because I'm going to back it up. And by the end of this, a light bulb will click, and you'll say, oh my God. Now, I know that I'm not in a suit and tie, and I know that I'm not on cable news, but hopefully this gets out because this is actually what was happening. And not only do they just blatantly say it, if you open your eyes, which I can give you the direct sources for so you could see it for yourselves. But I want you guys to know that this is the real deal. This is exactly what he was doing. So that sounds crazy, but he was wanting to create a superior race of species that would inherit the earth. They would take over everything and they would make everyone else slaves. Now, does that seem insane? Well, listen to this. It gets a lot stranger. We all know Jeffrey Epstein from his island, right? Little St. James. We are all fixated on Little St. James. What we're not paying attention to is the Zorro Ranch. The Zorro Ranch is what ends up being the piece to the puzzle that allows us to understand exactly what Jeffrey Epstein was doing, what Ghislaine were doing. What were they doing? Well, they were basically figuring out how to genetically modify humans into creating the perfect species. This is what they were doing. This is why they're hanging out with Bill Gates. This is why they were doing everything they were doing. They were lobbying behind the scenes, working back deals in order to gain enough money in order to do this scientific research. And does that seem preposterous to you? Well, just wait. Jeffrey Epstein, what was he? Was he a financier? How did he get his money? He got his money through the Rockefellers and through Israel. We kind of knew he was connected to Israel, we just didn't know how. How was he connected to Israel? And he was connected to Israel through the Rockefeller Group. The Rockefeller Group was what founded and what sustained everything he was doing. So what was he doing? He was basically gathering the most scientifically literate and most pronounced and profound geneticists throughout the entire world, holding conferences at Little St. James in order to gain more information and more data about how to exactly genetically modify the perfect human race. And furthermore, he was doing some very, very, very unscrupulous things as well. The people that went out to Little St. James weren't just people in Hollywood. They were people that were gifted. All of these people were gifted. Elon Musk was gifted. Bill Clinton was gifted. All of these people were gifted. Whether you like them or hate them, they've all been able to reach the pinnacle of what is deemed to be success within the hierarchy of our current society. These people were donating their sperm. That's exactly what they were doing. And if you think that's crazy, just wait. And I can back all this up. So just wait. Hear me out, and then you can talk trash, because I guarantee you that I won't hear a pin drop by the end of this video. They were donating sperm. What was Epstein doing? He was manipulating these little girls, which is so unfortunate. And he did have a proclivity towards that. He had a mental illness. That doesn't explain what else he was doing. That was just a cover up. Although he's guilty of it, that was a cover up for the greater thing that he was attempting to accomplish. And he did accomplish. He did accomplish it. He'd been after it for the last 15 years, and he accomplished it. They are transhumanists. They believe that we should merge with technology and we should create an abundant and glorious civilization of just a few people that dominate and rule over the rest of the world. And if you think that's crazy, then go through the Epstein files, because he mentions it hundreds of times throughout various emails. He mentions it verbatim, hundreds of times throughout various emails. So, what's the evidence for this? What is the evidence for this? He was bringing these women in, and they were basically incubators for this genetically modified baby in order for them to give birth to things that would be tested for science to see if it would work. And eventually, it did work. It's very, very difficult. And I know this. I went to med school. I know quite a bit about the way babies are formed, etc. The science behind it. It's very difficult to make a test tube baby. It's extremely difficult because it takes both the mother and the father. He was getting the most beautiful girls that had the best bilateral symmetry, which means that they have a higher proclivity towards things like resistance to illnesses and ailments. And he was mixing their genetics with the genetics of some of the most resourceful, some of the most talented, and some of the most intelligent people throughout our current civilization. It's insane, right? That's exactly what he was doing. He calls out to it. He says exactly what he was doing. He says that in fact, there are women that have testified that just so happen to be named Jane Doe because they don't want to go out and say that this occurred to them. And I don't blame them. But they said that they were referred to by both Jeffrey and by Ghislaine as being nothing more than human incubators. They would basically go out, they would all go out to Epstein Island, where they're off the grid, and they would impregnate these women. They would then kidnap them, which they were already kidnapped. They would bring them back to Zorro Ranch. And Zorro Ranch, no one talks about. What was that? What was that? It was a genetic lab. It was like a hospital where they would take care of these pregnant women that were impregnated on the island. And then they would eventually give birth to the child, take the child away, and that child would be used for the betterment of science and science literacy. It's exactly what would happen. Now, they killed most of these females. Some of them they let go. Some of them, actually two of them ended up breaking free because it was in New Mexico, guys. This isn't off the grid. This is in New Mexico. Why was it in New Mexico? Well, Epstein has a lot of ties to New Mexico. He has a lot of ties to a lot of places, doesn't he? Do you know that Les Wexner and Jeffrey Epstein basically founded the new development and discovery research network that goes on at Ohio State? They are founding it. And furthermore, the brand new one. And furthermore, do you know who was paying for the genetic research lab at Harvard University? Well, Jeffrey Epstein was. He was. He has ties to it. You can look it up. No bullshit. You can look this up. I know that you guys don't know me, but don't believe me for 1 second. Do your own research. And furthermore, if this video gets taken down or something happens to me, then you'll know that I was onto something, because I am. So and I know that's a lot to put on you guys, so just hear me out and watch me till the very end of the video. I promise you that it doesn't disappoint. I promise you that, as outlandish as it seems, this was simply what occurred. Don't kill the messenger here. This is what occurred. You can look back to Robert Maxwell himself, and he is said to, on numerous occasions, be waving that book, The Origin of Species, and saying, this is how we're going to solve society. This is what we need to be funding. This is what we need to be speaking about. He, within the Bergamot Press, had many scientific newsletters go out, and they were all about genetics. He was obsessed with genetics because these people think they're better than everyone else. And are they? I don't know. I mean, they perform a lot better within our society. They seem to have a grasp of things in a way that other people may not. I don't think that they should be the end-all be-all. I don't think they're better than everyone else, but they assume they were. These people are very cocky. They're very arrogant, and they want to reshape the world in their own image. Epstein himself said that he wanted to have literally millions of his offspring. That was his main goal. He wanted everyone to be just as smart and just as articulate and just as manipulative as he was in order to rule the world. He wanted it to be full of himself, literally. And you can look that up in the documents for yourself. People think it's just arrogance, but he took this arrogance to the next level because he was basically working on not only cloning people, but genetically engineering the modification of their genes before birth. Now, how is he doing this, and who is he doing it with? Well, that's when Mr. Bill Gates comes into play. Bill Gates. Bill Gates, people thought, was just a pervert, right? That's why he was on that plane. He was not on that plane for that reason. He wasn't on the plane for that reason, guys. I know that we all like to think that, but that wasn't the case. These projects that they were working on would subsequently also cure 99.9% of currently incurable or susceptible to humans different diseases, right? Which is where Bill Gates falls into play here, because he's all about basically protecting humans and solving human problems as related to various illnesses, diseases. That's what the Gates Foundation does. So when he heard about this, he thought, I am in. I am in on this, because he is working on this. He's doing these things that are very, very illegal, but happening within the United States and also offshore. And he wanted to participate in it because he thought that it would benefit his own foundation and give him further insight into his own scientific research to cure diseases, make humans disease-free, ailment-free, forever. And yeah, that's kind of a noble goal, don't get me wrong. At least it's better than the alternative of what he was doing. But Melinda didn't like that. She definitely didn't like that. And you can look in the documents of the emails when they subpoenaed his emails that she was very, very against this. She is quite religious. He is not. And she thought that what they were doing is wrong. It's wrong because they are inevitably murdering human lives. Now, whether or not you are in this category or this category as to abortion, I don't care. That's not what this video is about. But she inevitably was. Apparently she was, because that was the big fuss that eventually led to them separating. It wasn't because he had an affair. He had plenty of affairs back in the 90s that are all documented. It wasn't because of that. It was because of this. So let's get even further into it. What the fuck was going on? What all was going on at Zorro Ranch? Well, if you look at the flight logs, you would see who exactly was going to which place. He would have all the geneticists go to Zorro Ranch, and they would stay for a very, very long time. Because you could see when they left and when they arrived. And it was for how long? Yeah, it was about 9 months. That makes sense. That's quite a coincidence now, is it? I mean, that's exactly what they were doing. And if you want to know the crazy, crazy thing, the government was in on it. The government was absolutely in on it. Now, the government as a whole is just a broad blanket term, but very, very powerful people, including Bill Clinton, which for the record, I said it's going back that many years, he himself was basically let known that this was going to start happening, and he was okay with it because he wanted to get an edge on China and Russia. We know that both China and Russia do the same exact thing. They're making clones of humans, and they're working on hopefully cracking the genetic code in order to improve on humans, because it would benefit their country. If they have the smartest people, they have the most intelligent people, they have the strongest people that can perform in the military. It's like an Orwellian existence. We all want to get to that. It's much like the race to AI. The only difference is that when it comes to this genetic testing, it's very iffy. And in the United States, it's especially iffy because the majority of people are, at least they claim to be, currently Christian. And they don't like the sound of this going on because that's a human soul. You're disparaging, you're tampering with God, you're playing God, you're pretending to be God, and you should allow that to happen naturally. And they actually, during the 90s, attempted to pass this, and it just failed miserably. Not only in the eyes of the public, but also the people that voted against it. They didn't like it because we're very religious, and they just didn't like it. It's as simple as that. I mean, it's pretty well documented. At least that's what they said. So you have to take them at their word, I suppose. But that's exactly what they were doing. So in a nutshell, they were gathering the genetics, sperm, of the most successful people to have currently existed within society. They were then artificially inseminating these females, and it was all artificial. You think that they were actually doing the deed. They weren't. They weren't. The things that Epstein did on the side were wrong and terrible, and he is a terrible person for doing that. But that had nothing to do. That was just a proclivity that he had on the side. And I think it's because he realized that he could get away with murder. And it's because he was being backed by the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds and big banks. Like, how do you think he got on Bear Stearns? He wasn't a part of Bear Stearns. He never made one trade. People that think he was just a stock trader are insane. They're absolutely out of their mind bonkers. That's not what happened there. He was very good. He was a genius. So Epstein was an absolute genius. People think he was shrewd, just very, he was very arrogant, but they think he was an idiot. They just think he was a rich trust fund idiot. He wasn't. He was an absolute genius. He was an absolute genius. And what was he particularly good at? He was very good at mathematics, and you need very, very complex mathematics when breaking apart what could potentially happen when you mix and alter certain genes. So, yeah, his prediction skills are par none. He was an absolute genius, but he didn't have the science know-how and know-how of genetics, genealogy, in order to solve this by himself. So what did he do? He smoozed around and he paid people, and a lot of people didn't even have to get paid because a lot of these people accepted and, I guess, promoted and supported what he was doing. He was trying to create a very dominant, very futuristic, very intelligent, very transhumanistic society, where in which there was a small group of people that ruled over everyone else. And I think that the scientists were more just fascinated and felt honored to have the ability to work on this, because this is something that has been outlawed forever. So they were just excited to be at the cutting edge, the cusp of scientific innovation. Now, the other people, the billionaires, they were in it for what I can only imagine to be, because I didn't read this. This is just my own thought process. I would imagine that these people were wanting to make people more like themselves. Whenever someone gets to the top of a hierarchical structure, they think to themselves, wow, I must be great. Let me pat myself on the back. I wish there were more of me. I wish there were more people that were as dedicated, hardworking, and intelligent as I am, because then our society would be a much better place. And that was probably the mentality of the majority of people. Now, the people that worked in office and were a part of the government, even Bill Clinton, and for the record, Hillary Clinton also knew about this, they themselves, being that they were president at the time, they thought it might be an edge up, because they knew around that same time that China and Russia had also started doing this. Now, they knew about the cloned sheep, right? We all know about the cloned sheep. You know, it's old news. What they knew, and what we know now, at least we have rumors of, which they're true because we're all doing it. If you can do something as a government, you will do it, because you have to think that without a doubt, other countries are also participating in this and attempting to do it also. So if you don't do it, you'll fall behind. Imagine if China or Russia ended up cracking this code before the United States. They would have a superior group of people that could easily take over the rest of the world. They would just be superior in every single aspect. They would have the military capability of a god, essentially, which is kind of what we're doing with AI. It's the same thing. With AI, they are not slowing down, because whoever gets there first wins everything. With artificial general superintelligence, they win everything, because it will solve all your problems for you. Just throw a bunch of money at it and it will fix it. That's what they were doing, but on the level of human genealogy. Now, the OGBYN clinic that was in Ohio State, that was very, very crucial to, funny enough, both Jeffrey and to Ghislaine. In fact, that's where Ghislaine was most involved, was there. It was there. And she had learned exactly what to do, and also participated in bringing some of those people out with her as help to Zorro Ranch in order to perform these various procedures and to give natural birth to this human baby test subject, one at a time. I mean, this is documented, guys. I know it sounds super conspiratorial. I get it. I get that it sounds crazy. You're like, this guy's off his rocker. He's Alex Jones. This is real, and this will come out. I assure you this will come out. You just have to read. You just have to read. You have to stop focusing on the fact that Jeffrey Epstein was a pervert, where in which he was. But we don't, for the same reason we don't care about the fact that, as terrible as it is, like we when we think about Adolf Hitler, we don't say, wow, he was addicted to like methamphetamine, because that's just a side note. As terrible as it is, and for the victims, I can only imagine, but that's a side note to what he was actually attempting to do. Adolf Hitler was attempting to take over the world. And if you look at everything that Epstein said, and every book that was in his library, it all referred back to the Dr. Mengele, the one that was in, he was a part of the Nazi party. I mean, he was doing the same exact thing. So what I think happened at the end of the war, when we finally conquered the Nazis, I think they said, wow, they've really made a lot of progress here. Let's see if we can take all their scientists, which, by the way, that's what formed NASA. They formed a wide array of different things that happened within the United States. We all grabbed their scientists because they were light years ahead of ours. They had been performing studies that we simply didn't perform ourselves, or couldn't, because we couldn't get either the money or the support from the public, and it was just abominable. We just couldn't do it. But they were light years ahead of us scientifically. I mean, look at the rocketry, look at the propulsion systems, look at the energy, look at the everything that we grabbed from them. We grabbed tons of genetic literature from these doctors. I mean, look at Francis and Crick, even. That was back in the time of Robert Maxwell. He's obsessed. It wasn't in the time of him, but that was him. It was further, it was closer to Francis and Crick in discovering the helical structure that composes DNA. They were obsessed with genealogy. They were obsessed with genetics. And that is exactly what Epstein was doing. He's been doing it for a very long time. And I think he cracked it. And the second he cracked it, then they said, that's enough with you. We can't let anyone know what you were doing because the public will freak out. And most importantly, you will have either intentionally or unintentionally put a lot of people in very powerful places on the radar. And we can't have them tied to what exactly we were doing because it will destroy everything. People will be immensely furious that we're creating a genetically superior human race of people that will inevitably take over the world in every aspect of what people care about, in the finance, in art, in literature, in sheer wit, in discovery, in intellect, um, in everything, like in politics. They will be very, very highly capable compared to the average everyday human. People would freak. People would freak out. They wouldn't like it. It wouldn't be natural. It'd be a test tube baby. What is this? You are pretending to be God. So they had to do it in secrecy. They did. They had to do it in secrecy. And should it have been done? The way they did it was monstrous. But here's the thing about the United States is the United States will do absolutely anything to gain an edge against other countries, especially when other countries are doing something. We have to do it. Our hands are tied. And the United States will cut off our hands in order to save the rest of the body. It's like if you have cancer in an area of your body, you will absolutely be willing to cut it out in order to save the rest of your body. That's what America is. America is a big, intricate system. And sometimes people are just disposable. It's as simple as that. In order to continue on the path of nationalistic supremacy, we just had to do it. And it was something that was taboo and people would be against it, but that's exactly what we were doing. Now, where are these babies? I have no idea. I would assume that these babies that were created at Zorro Ranch are still out there. And for the record, the 23andMe studies that is like, oh, it's a big idea. It's a grand idea to give your genetics to a third party in order for them to tell you where you were from, where your ancestors from. Jeffrey Epstein was also a massive contributor in that, and he worked on it behind the scenes. In fact, he initially created that company and he gave it, look in the files, unless he made this up, which I don't know why he would make this up because he never thought it would be exposed. He funded that. He funded that endeavor, and he just didn't want to be tied to it. So he made someone else tied to it. But that was his study. And it was his study in order to further the research he was doing at Zorro Ranch. It's as simple as that. Look it up. I knew, even back then, that you do not want to give the government or anyone that the government has access to all of our genetics. And that's what they did. They created a giant database with all of our genetics. Then they can test us and they can see how far we go, what do we become. They can tell a lot about us. That is tied to your social security number. So you have your genetics tied to your social, which has your name, it has your occupation, it has your income, which is highly correlated to how intelligent you are. And then they could say, hey, why don't we mix these people that are up here within our society with these people? And they have basically biomarkers for the genetics of what make people exhibit certain physical or mental traits. And they're mixing those together. Now they're using AI. By the way, the forefront of AI was also talked about 15 to 20 years ago on Little St. James Island. It was a closed door. They had to do it out of the country, actually, because if they didn't, then it would have to be accessible to the shareholders of these people that belong to big corporate brands such as Google, such as Microsoft. Even Elon Musk attended. There's many, many people you know that attended these off the cuff. Even Lex Friedman talked about it. Lex is not a bad person. He's an amazing person, but he's a very smart person that knows a lot of people in science, involved in science. And that is my puppy. All I'd like to say to you guys is do your own research, and I'm telling you, this is what happened. He was basically testing and altering and manipulating the human genome in order to create a superior race of humans that would take over the world. That's honestly what Jeffrey Epstein was doing. That is the tie that ties everything together. And so whether you think I'm a kook or not, I don't care. Do your own research, and remember, guys, I love my life and I would never do anything to ruin my life, and I promise you that if anything bad happens to me, look back to this video, and I'm not playing, because these people do not care. They will take out anyone that even hints towards this, because I've never seen anyone tie this together like this. Maybe one or two people, and it gained no traction. Funny enough, I wonder who owns YouTube. Oh wait, it's Google. So I really, really hope that you guys watch this, and I really hope that you hear me out, because I sometimes speak about crazy things or silly things. I'm not always that guy. I'm very, I'm human. This right here, I'm right about, and I know I'm right about, and we'll see in time. Call me crazy all you'd like, but in time, I will be vindicated. I guarantee it.